What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. We're always brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Spitz Road, and also Fresh Roasted Coffee. Go to freshroastedcoffee.com, enter in the promo code Back Your Play for 20% off your first purchase. I have mine right here on this nasty early April day. We welcome in our NFL guru, our NFL insider, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029, The Game down there in Tampa, Florida. Of course, Lloyd covers the East Coast like no other. And today we look at the NFC South. We'll go around the league, some news and notes, but always good to catch up, my friend. How you been?
Doing good. Q, we're getting closer to draft day. Everybody's getting all excited about their team and, looking at the prospects. Prospects are visiting
Yeah.
teams, so a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I can't wait when we definitely dive into the draft over the next week or two. NFC South, kind of a down season. Both Tampa and New Orleans both went 9-8. Atlanta 7-10. Talked a little bit about their changes, bringing in a new quarterback, a viable option, which we believe will help them, and Kirk Cousins. Then you got Carolina that really struggled under Young. They make a head coaching change. Let's start with, Tampa. Interesting kind of story, right? Because they give the money to Baker Mayfield. You got the wide receivers in place. That's a good story. Mayfield earned that contract. Listen, I mean, he's no Tom Brady. Tom Brady with the run with Tampa. Obviously, we saw it first year after all those years with New England winning a championship. But be that as it may, in that division, I think you look at Tampa. I certainly think you look at Atlanta. Carolina is still a very young team. New Orleans is kind of hit or miss with their quarterback situation as well. So I look at Tampa right now, a team on the rise, but they also have the pieces in place after having a nice performance run in the playoffs and then waxing the Philadelphia Eagles in that wild card game.
Q, it very interesting division because it's a very tightly grouped. It was a fight to the last game, 17 game schedule, and you had Tampa Bay Bucks, they're 9-8. You had New Orleans, who are also 9-8. Now the Bucks beat them on the head-to-head tiebreakers and everything. We'll start with the Bucks. Now the Bucks are interesting, as you were saying, a team that came together and Todd Bowles on a hot seat, and everybody's wondering, is he going to be able to keep his job and this and that? But they've done a nice job assembling talent, and they've also brought back a lot of their players that they wanted that were key free agents, particularly Mike Evans,
Yep.
and then Lavonte David, their linebacker, Antonio Winfield, their playmaker in the secondary. So when I look at this team, right now, I'd have to say Atlanta's going to probably move to the second spot, but we'll have to say that Tampa is still there as the kings of this division. And Baker Mayfield had the resurgence there, his fourth team that he's been on, and he seems to have found a home. They gave him the contract that he needed to vote of confidence. And I think he's going to continue to ascend there. Rashad White, a very good young running back that on the field a lot, is able to catch a lot of passes. He's done a nice job in that offense. Now they lost their offense coordinator, Canales. He goes to Carolina, so that'll be interesting to see how they're going to replace him. But I do like that they brought back Mike Evans, a guy who I wasn't sure in terms of dollars and cents if they were going to be able to keep him there.
Yep.
But he wanted to stay with Tampa. They give him the money. Obviously, everybody knows he's good for 1,000 yards and probably about 8 to 10 touchdowns every year. A difference maker in that offense. And this team, I think a big spot they're going to have to look at in the draft is their offensive line. They're going to have to make sure that Baker's not taking a lot of hits. And then their defense has some age. They have some guys like Tryon, the pass rusher. He's a Sri Lanka. He's a very good young pass rusher. And they have Winfield, as I said, and Lavonte David. So that defense has some pieces to work with for Todd Bowles, a defensive coach. But I think offensively, they need to get Tristan Wirfs some help on that offensive line.
Yeah. Can Baker Mayfield duplicate last season's success and bridge it into year number 2 with Tampa Bay, the well-traveled veteran, as you illustrated? I look at this Atlanta team. I love the move. You know what I feel about Kirk Cousins. Taylor Heineke takes the pay cut. He's going to compete with Cousins. Desmond Ritter was an absolute disaster. Every quarterback they threw back there was an absolute disaster. They had to go in a different direction. I think Cousins in that offense with the running back, the tight end, skilled players, I think it sets up nicely. Robinson, to me, that's a kid that's going to get you 11, 1,200 yards. They've got some really nice skill player weapons. My only concern with the Atlanta Falcons secondary and also getting to the quarterback. But with that being said, I love the move for Cousins. I think he can play at least another 3 to 5 years at a high level, a very consistent level, because that's what they need at that position. And I look at them in Tampa to be 1-2 in that division.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch this Atlanta team because, as you said, you got Raheem Moore coming back to Atlanta. He was a DB's coach before. He comes from the Rams, former head coach in the past when he was very young, about in his early 30s, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's still very young,
Yep.
getting a separate opportunity to be the head coach. And I think with Zach Robinson coming over with him running that offense, it's not going to be as stale as it was with Arthur Smith. And this group, as you said, you bring in Kirk Cousins. He's made a ton of money in his career, over $300 million he's going to make. Only one playoff win, but he's a guy that's going to put up those big numbers, Q. And when you talk about this skill set around him, Bijan Robinson, they didn't use him enough last year. Everybody was crying about his usage in
Yep.
terms of fantasy football, in terms of real football as well. They used a very high draft pick on him. I expect Bijan Robinson to get a lot of passing yards, catches, and also run the football as well. Tyler Algier will probably take a back seat. He's also there for them. Drake London,
Big time
a
weapon.
good tall receiver. That new age receiver. Throw him a jump ball, he's going to get it, and the
Yep.
guy's going to, fight for every pass. So he's a good young receiver there. And then you got to talk about Kyle Pitts. A couple of years ago, we all were like, wow, rookie season. Everybody's talking about him as the next Travis Kelce type. And he kind of took a back stage in that Arthur Smith offense. So I think they're going to get him the ball early and often. And then defensively, they have Jesse Bates, who's a very good playmaker they got from the Bengals in their secondary, but their defense does need some help, as you talked about, and probably their offensive line too.
Where I think Cousins is going to help big time is the fact that the wide receivers only had, I think, 2 or 3 touchdown receptions
Yes.
combined, right? He got the tight ends involved. He got the running backs involved as well. So they definitely will open it up with Cousins, no doubt. I like them to compete with Tampa Bay in that division. Then you have the Saints, and again, they made the move for Carr. Obviously, it just did not pan out. I don't know where I kind of look at New Orleans and say that I have any type of confidence in what they're doing, because I've seen this over the last several years. I look at this team right now, and it's not a great division, right? But when you think about it, who do you trust the quarterback position right now in New Orleans?
Yeah, Q, they brought Carr over. The Raiders were like, take him. You know what I mean? But he did not play that well for them,
He
in
didn't.
my opinion. He just too inconsistent. And he's a guy everybody talks about, oh, he's almost MVP, and then he broke his ankle. This is, that's going on 4 years ago or so. And he just was not consistent enough, as you were saying, for the Saints. And they were actually better off in a lot of games where they had Taysom Hill just straight running the football, him and Kamara, and just running it down people's throat, and throwing the ball was kind of a tricky situation. But this is another team the coach is on the hot seat to start the season. So
Yeah.
Dennis Allen's been there a while. He's a guy to replace Sean Payton, a loyal soldier. But you wonder, is he better as a defensive coordinator than the CEO type head coach? And then you have Carmichael running his offense once again, the same guy. They're running the same group back, and I'm wondering about results because that offense has some explosive people. In particularly, Chris Olave is one of the best young route running receivers out there. You have him. I talked about Alvin Kamara, who still has some explosiveness, able to catch the football out of the backfield, and then you have young playmakers like Rashid Shaheed, who can stretch the field. So there's some pieces there, but clearly, as you said, when I look at the Saints, they're just so inconsistent. Lost so many one score type of games, I just can't put them in an upper echelon with the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Atlanta Falcons, who seem to pass them.
Yeah, Olave put up his numbers: 87 receptions on 138 targets. They targeted him almost 140 times. The next receiver was Shaheed with 46 receptions on 75 targets, but it also tells you maybe a little inconsistency there with the quarterback from a completion percentage. Even though Carr's numbers, 68%, a lot of it was dink and dunk, averaged 7.1 yards a pass play. So that kind of tells you all you need to know. I don't like the Saints. I'm actually looking at hammering their under with their win total going into the next year, and that leaves us with Carolina. Frank Reich didn't work out. Bryce Young struggled, but there seems to be I don't want to say a renewed sense of confidence with this franchise. I mean, I guess you can only go up after going 2-15. They did make some moves. They brought in some veterans, right? They brought in a guy like Clowney just to kind of beef up the defense. Deontay Johnson. Hopefully, you fix the offense with Young. I mean, look, can they win 4 or 5 games? I think what you want to see is a quarterback that struggled big time. And Adam Thielen came out and said, look, it's not him. It was a system. It was the coaching. Okay, fine. You just want to see if he can improve on 11 touchdowns, 10 picks, and also protect this kid. He was sacked 62 times.
Okay, and the big thing with this team is consistency. You have David Tepper, their owner, he's got to put a plan in place. You don't want to tell a billionaire how to run his team, but he's on his 3rd head coach and
Yep.
firing guys mid-season. And that's just not going to work. So he's got to give Canales an opportunity to come in there, build his program over 2-3 strong years, and then see what he's got. Because this team, as we know, has planned for the future in terms of they traded away everything, to get Bryce Young. So the Bears have their pick this season, and Bryce Young was their guy. So, honestly, everybody's going to say, oh, they should have taken C.J. Stroud, and is Bryce Young the right guy? Was he a guy that was just a product of the system at Alabama where he had just so many playmakers around him? And he did struggle in some spots in Carolina. You saw some flashes, but also some interceptions. So, as you said, no place to go but up here. You got Bryce Young, who needs to step it up, obviously. Miles Sanders, who they got from the Eagles, he really kind of disappeared in this offense. A guy who, he's got to get more. He was supposed to be that feature back and just did not get it done for them. Obviously, Adam Thielen, you probably want to get younger there at the receiver position. He's still kind of consistent, and they also need offensive line and tight end. So they need help everywhere. This draft is going to be big for them. Obviously, not having a first rounder is going to hurt them. And I think trading away their number 1 pass rushers to the Giants, that was a way to kind of get back,
Yeah,
some
Burns.
draft capital. Yeah.
Yeah. So we talk about some teams that are going all in and some teams that aren't going all in. We kind of mock the Dallas Cowboys. Then you look what the Jets are doing, signing Mike Williams and then making the big move for Hassan Reddick. I mean, that's, again, depending upon how you're going to use him defensively in the scheme as we kind of look around the league for a moment. I think Reddick's a solid player, right? I think he was also utilized late the wrong way defensively. We kind of saw that. Sometimes you had him drop back in coverage. Sometimes, you had him rushing around off the edge. I mean, it's just you got to put him in his strong suits. I think it was a 3rd round pick when you think about it. So it's almost like Huff, and then you turn around, you get Reddick. So pick your poison right there. But I do like what the Jets are doing. They're basically coming out and saying, okay, we know we've got the 40-year-old quarterback coming off that Achilles injury after 4 or 5 offensive snaps. Here we go. Here's our window of opportunity. I got to see it. I got to see Rodgers. I got to see him in OTAs. I got to see him in training camp. I got to see him take a couple hits in the preseason. And then I got to see how it plans out and plays out in September and October before I even think about this team contending and being better than Miami, being better than Buffalo. But I'll say this, defensively, they're a leg up. They're putting all the pieces together. I don't know what you feel about what the Jets have done this offseason, but I have to give them a little credit for some of the moves that they've made.
Yeah, the Jets are an interesting team. They've been in a lot of close games. Finished 7-10. That defense, as you were saying, was their calling card. Surprisingly, that defense only allowed 355 points per game, but their offense, they got to improve that. They have Hall at the running back position and Wilson at receiver, two good young emerging players, but they only scored 268 points last year. So, everybody's going to point to obviously Aaron Rodgers not
Yep.
being there and everything, but you just got to have more. So they're trying to reload this team. They're bringing the band back together. Another one, Robert Salah, he's coming back. Joe Douglas, their general manager, he's still there, and we're going to see if this thing works. But I think in terms of that trade that you led with Q, I think they got the better of the Eagles in this one. Hassan Reddick he's still got a lot of gas in the tank. I think he's better than Huff, who the Eagles got. He's the Eagles, I heard some people saying, oh, he wasn't playing the run the way he needed to, but he wasn't a great fit for that defensive scheme that the Eagles were running. I think they kind of misused him. And then what they got for him, don't forget, it's a 2026
Yep.
third-round draft pick. So, that's a ways for the Eagles to wait, and I thought they could have got more. There was that threat of a holdout, but we know in today's NFL where a guy could be fined up to
Yeah.
$40,000 per day missed. They're not going to hold out.
No.
They're going to eventually come, and the Eagles had his rights. I thought he was a player they could have kept. So the Eagles obviously are hopeful. The break point is he has to play 67% of snaps or get 10 sacks in 2024 for that to go to be a second rounder. So I think second rounder probably be a little better value, but third round that they could have got more for that for
Sticking
him.
with the AFC, Kansas City for two reasons: the Rashee Rice situation, and then they wound up signing Carson Wentz, who right now has turned out to be a journeyman quarterback to back up Patrick Mahomes, whether he's holding a clipboard or not, to a one-year deal. Rice cooperating with authorities in Dallas after the speeding Corvette and Lamborghini sport utility vehicle caused a chain reaction crash on a very busy Dallas highway Saturday. That is per his attorney. So again, it's not a very good look. Total of 6 field goals were involved in the crash. We've seen this with NFL players and speeding. We've seen it with a couple of the Raiders players, right? It's just not a good look. I don't know. Are we going to wait for the whole investigation by the police first and foremost, and then see if the NFL steps in here, or would this be more or less a team issue if Kansas City wants to administer any type of punishment and or suspension?
Yeah, Q, I think, at first it may be club based. The team is going to bring him in, obviously talk to him, but it will be a league sanction situation. Obviously, they're going to let the authorities do their investigation, and then the league will get involved based on that. Luckily, nobody was critically injured in this, but too often, as you said, bad decisions. I know you got a lot of money and fun, but Q, they showed the videos everywhere. It's him and his guys. You know what I mean? And you got to surround yourself with better people. Obviously, bad decision. They got out of there after the accident. Thankfully, I think there was 6 cars involved in this, and nobody was critically injured or anything like that. But he's definitely going to have to take accountability for this. As you said, he lawyered up right now, and he's going to let his legal team take care of this. But I'm sure Andy Reid will have some long, hard discussions with them, and it's a distraction, But the teams always say it's better having a distraction this time of year rather than in season. But it's something that the Chiefs are going to have to work on. Brett Veach, their general manager, Andy Reid, and the rest of his staff, and try to piece this thing together. Obviously, receiver is a position of interest for Kansas City going in the draft. They always need playmakers because they've had guys like Sky Moore underachieve. They did bring in Hollywood Brown this offseason, and maybe they'll try to fix this. But they're counting on Rice. And, he had a pretty good rookie season, and they thought he'd make that jump this year. But this is something that's going to fall him into training camp.
Tuesday edition of BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here, brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Ridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey, at the Plaza. Deptford open 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 10 to 8. Saturday 10 to 6, Sunday 10 to 5. Do not forget, give them a ring, 856-579-8250. They got the tennis, they got the golf, they got all the baseball equipment. Baseball coaches out there, if you're looking for unis, if you're looking for them to partner up with you guys for a good cause, give them a ring, 856-579-8250. I mentioned Carson Wentz, first 6 years of his career with the Eagles, Colts, Washington. Forgot he had a cup of coffee with the Rams and now signed on as a backup with Kansas City. It is amazing how some of these quarterbacks are still getting work. He's only 31. I mean, I've said this and I'll say it again. I can't recall a time where a quarterback was on the cusp of making a deep run in the playoffs, arguably winning NFL League MVP, perhaps winning a Super Bowl. And now he's just resigned to the fact that he is going to be a journeyman backup for the rest of his career and a bust of a draft pick, by the way.
Yeah, Q, it's been a precipitous fall, and you talk about him and, Jared Goff went one, he went number two, and Goff's, I know he got traded, but
Yeah.
his career has been a lot more steady and stable and stronger performances. Carson Wentz, as you said, it just all imploded that after that he died. The play didn't even count, if you remember. He dove at the goal line at LA Coliseum
The
against the
Rams.
Rams and got his knee hurt. And after that, it just was downhill from there. He had a huge contract, never lived up to it. I talked to several people around that team in the locker room at the Philadelphia Eagles, just did not buy into him. And he also just did not get along with the coaching staff. But he's gotten chance after chance. As you said, the Colts thought they could fix him. The Washington thought they could fix him, and then now he's a journeyman backup. But made a lot of money in his career, but definitely he's a guy. The Eagles, it's like, oh, they made a big mistake in taking him and paying him, but luckily they got out of it for the team. But you see a lot of these teams. One of the things I'm doing for my show, Q, is looking at all the bonus baby first round quarterbacks over the years, and how they performed. And you look at, like you were saying, some of them, it's crazy. They become that journeyman backup after they were that big top 10 pick and just never lived up to expectations.
Speaking of one of his former teams, Washington, there's a thought right now that I guess you can say it's a coin toss on if the Commanders, who draft now Washington number 2, if they're looking at Drake May, Jaden Daniels right now. Drake May's odds to go at number 2 are right around plus 105. Daniels a little more better juice to 115 to go at number 2. I guess your guess is as good as mine, right? Then you got the issue with Minnesota where they might be looking at a quarterback, even though they brought in Sam Darnold. So the draft, which is right around the corner, really interesting to see what's going to happen with those teams.
It is, Q, and I've been looking at the top of this draft, getting ready for my show and preparing, and the big thing is, everybody talks about the quarterbacks, and obviously we're enamored with them. They're the guy that has the ball in their hands most, but some of these guys are just straight overrated, and it's like, all right, they're talking about in the top 4 picks. They're saying Arizona may want to trade out of 4, that all 4 teams may take a quarterback, because you have Caleb Williams, obviously he's going to be a definitive number 1. It
Yep.
seems like the Bears are setting that thing up. And then you have Jaden Daniels, he's in a mix. I kind of think Washington likes him a lot. They had a huge contingency at his pro day at LSU. And then you have Drake May. And then the high riser, Q, is J.J. McCarthy. Everybody all of a sudden is enamored with him.
How
I
much of
watched him
that
a
do you
lot
think
throughout the
is
season.
how much of that do you think goes Harbaugh blowing some smoke here?
I do. I think he's pumping his guy up, and he was a national championship quarterback, and everybody's going to shows that last throw that he made in his pro day where it goes 70 yards in the air, it's a dime and everything. But in terms of game tape Q, he's a solid quarterback, but I just don't know if he's that difference maker. And as we were talking about earlier, Wentz and some of these other guys, teams just get enamored and they feel like they have to take a quarterback in the top spot, and they reach too often for
Yeah.
these guys. So and I think maybe McCarthy may be that guy. We'll wait and see if he's that difference maker. I mean, you never know. You look at the 2022 draft. Everybody was talking about the quarterbacks there. Now Kenny Pickett is with the Eagles as a backup, and out of all those quarterbacks taken in 2022. You have Malik Willis. He's not playing really.
Nope.
He's a backup. Sam Howell. He's a backup. Bailey Zappi, and then the best quarterback was the last player in the draft, Brock Purdy. So, you know what I mean? It's an inexact science when taking these quarterbacks. And the thing is, they can be a GM/coach killer if they pick the wrong guy.
Yeah, and then lastly, as we close it out, I just saw this on the wire. I think it was yesterday. Uh, and you feel bad when some of these players pass very young. Vontae Davis, I think he was
5 years old.
35. Yeah, so former cornerback Vontae Davis. And, it's a shame because the first thing you remember is the last thing about somebody's career. And that was the fact that, he basically retired at the half of a game, but he was pretty transparent and honest and said his heart wasn't in it. I know people were kind of getting on him for that, but you never know what these players deal with, endure, absorb. You're talking about whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the NFL, right? We always talk about after something like this happens right away. What do we, when we don't know, when we don't have the official report, right? When there's no real cause of death. I mean, so basically he was found, the police confirmed this. They were called to the residence by a house assistant who found the homeowner deceased. They confirmed that they're investigating as we speak, but again, could be 90 days to determine the cause of death. And right away, people want to speculate, and we're not going to do that, but you just never know what transpires after a player retires from the NFL, especially if they don't have a fallback plan.
It's crazy going too soon, a young guy that he had his issues at Illinois where he played in college and then with the teams that drafted
Yep.
him. Another guy was a high round draft pick and just kind of bounced around a little bit. And I believe his brother is Vernon Davis, the tight end that played so well for the Niners, and the Broncos want to bring with them. And they had kind of a tough upbringing. So, with the situation, you never really know what's going on. It's very unfortunate with him. And as you said, the first thing everybody's going to say, oh, that's a guy that quit at halftime. But, there's always more underlying things. And it's unfortunate. And you pray for him and his family.
A good player, played 10 years in the NFL, 22 picks, almost 400 tackles, 120 something odd games. And yes, to confirm, just to be accurate, you are correct. The older brother, Vernon Davis, also played in the NFL as a tight end, 2-time Pro Bowl selection, had that great run with the 49ers. All right, of course, he is Lloyd Vance jumping on BYP with Q. I'm Rich Quinones. Show as far as Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Where can everyone hear it, tune in, and follow you?
Sure, we're going tonight, actually, Tuesday night. We're going to go 8 to 9 for the team. We'll be on 102.9 The Game. You can find that online and the Broad Street South Network. So looking forward to it. And Devon Alford is going to join me this week in the
Nice.
co-host seat. And we're going to talk. We'll talk about the Eagles' move of Son Reddick. We'll also start moving towards the draft, talking about a lot of the teams and their needs.
Don't forget, Lloyd is on X as well, at Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football, and of course, PFWA award winner, former ESPN NFL Network contributor, Black College Football Hall of Fame selection committee writer, researcher, historian as well, and host of his own show, and always kind enough to join us on Q as well as BYP. Draft is right around the corner, and we will definitely dive into that. And I'll tell you this. So real quick, I just saw that the Chiefs, let me give you the last thought on this, just re-signed running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't have the numbers to that. And this report out in New York, I guess Darren Waller is waiting to see who's going to be the quarterback before he decides to retire. You know what? If that's going to be your mindset, get the hell out of here because you had too many drops and you were injured. It was Kenny Golladay all over.
Yeah, he got underachieved, and he's at the end of his career more than the beginning of it. And it burned so bright for a little bit with the Raiders, and it just kind of dwindled the last couple seasons. And he was on the Giants, but you really didn't see him making a game-changing plays last year.
By the way, you know how much Aaron Rodgers earned through the NFL's performance-based pay system?
4 snaps? Let me see. I don't know. You tell me.
You probably spend this when you go out to dinner with the family, maybe a little more. $81.14.
I'm sure he made a lot more in
I
terms
know.
of his contract, what is it? Those, I guess he was getting about 40 million for the whole season. So,
Yeah, still though.
nobody's crying for him. Nobody's picking up his
No,
dinner check.
no. Hey, don't forget, we'll put this up on the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. Follow along at Rich Q on IG and X and Facebook. And we always appreciate everyone checking out the shows during the week. We'll do it again later in the week. We'll continue our look around the NFC. Then we'll switch gears to the AFC, as Lloyd mentioned, draft's right around the corner. We will do an in-depth preview of the 2024 NFL draft as well. Always appreciate a couple moments, pal. Thank you.
Shoot, thanks for having me on.